Alright guys, so we back in. Right here what I have for you guys is my versus / comparison video of the Moto G5 Plus versus the Moto X Pure Edition. So without further ado, let's jump in. So the first thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall build quality and design on both of these devices. Now, in the interest of speed, I'm not going to take these guys out of the case, but I've been using these guys for a while, and I can really give you guys my honest opinions on both of these. So starting off with the Moto X Pure Edition here, overall, in terms of build quality and design, I'd have to say that Motorola did a great job here. There's no rattling or creaking of any kind. All the buttons are very tactile and give a nice clicky feedback. The back soft touch material is very grippy and it doesn't slip in the hands. It's actually very nice, and that Motorola dimple gives a great spot to rest your finger. Great spot indeed. And from a design standpoint, they really went with a minimalist, straightforward approach here with a nice, clean, tapered design, so it actually feels very good in the hand and has a nice weight to it. So it's really, really solid. So in terms of build quality and design for the Moto X Pure Edition, it's really, really good, and I've had no issues with it. Now, jumping over to the Moto G5 Plus, again, you have more of the same, except for the one downside here is that they got rid of the Motorola dimple, and they've got rid of that grippy, soft touch plastic. So this device without a case is a little bit more slippery in the hands, so it will slip without a case, and I don't really like that. That being said, the metal design or the metal backplate also feels very good in the hands. It's very cold to the touch, feels very nice, like that. But I do not like the fact that you're losing that gripability, so you almost, in my opinion, and keep in mind this all is in my opinion, you almost have to wear a case on this guy because it will slip, and without the case, it did slip out of my hands. Didn't take any falls, but it did slip out of my hands. So the build quality takes a little bit of a hit there, but in terms of overall design, again, I think Motorola, now owned by Lenovo, did a great job here. There's no rattling or creaking of any kind, and it feels very, very solid in the hands. So from a build quality and design standpoint, both of these devices are really, really good. So you should have no issues regardless of which one you pick up. Next, let's talk about the displays on these guys. Let's start with the Moto G5 Plus. Up front, dead center here, you have a 5.2-inch 1080p display. And I believe that guy has a screen density of, what is it, 403? Yep, 403. And you can see it's a 1080p screen there. Sorry about the focus, guys. Alright, so that being said, in terms of display on the Moto G5 Plus, I have to tell you guys, it really is a really good display, and I've had no issues with it, and it gets really bright outdoors in day-to-day usage. Again, don't really have to max it out in terms of brightness. That's pretty much where I keep it on a regular basis, and I've had no issues whatsoever in terms of the display. It's been very, very good. Alright, jumping over to the Moto X Pure Edition, this guy has a 5.7-inch quad HD display, and again, this is another good one. In terms of displays, I had no issues with the display. In terms of day-to-day usage and outdoors, I did notice over time that I had to crank this one a little bit higher, just a touch. But still, that's pretty much why I keep it on a daily basis, and I've had no issues with it. And again, in terms of raw numbers for you guys, you can see if CPU Z would stop crashing. You can see, guys, that it is a 5.7 inch display right there, and it has a screen density of 515, and it is a quad HD display. So you can see it right there, 1440p by 2560p. But in terms of display, when we talk about the displays on either of these devices, it really is a joyful experience on either device. So putting the numbers aside, putting the resolutions aside, y'all know me, I tell it how it is. A good display is a good display. And in terms of display, I have to say that this is a tie across the board. Both solid displays on either of these devices. Now, moving on, let's talk about the hardware and the software in these devices. Let's start with the Moto X Pure Edition. Hardware-wise, the Moto X Pure Edition has 3 gigs of RAM and 16 gigs of onboard storage with micro SD card expansion. It has a 3000 milliamp hour battery, has a 21 megapixel camera on the back, which is capable of 4K video recording at 30 frames a second and 1080p slow motion at 120 frames a second. And that's got a 21 megapixel camera there. Other internals, it has a Snapdragon 808 processor, an Adreno 418 GPU. Okay, flipping it over, on the front, as I've said, it has a 5.7 inch quad HD display. It has a 5 megapixel front facing camera with flash. You can see it right there. And the front facing camera is capable of recording 1080p video and 720p slow motion at 120 frames. Alright, again, you have your dual front firing speakers. Really is a really solid device in terms of the hardware. Now, talking about the software, this guy, the Moto X Pure Edition, is running a pretty much stock version of Android 6.0 Marshmallow with Motorola's tweaks on top. So you have your twist to launch the camera. You got your chop for the flashlight. If I can get it to launch without shaking up the whole table here, guys. Sorry. So you got your yeah. Anyways, can't do it without knocking stuff over. Got your chop for the flashlight. Got your twist gesture to launch the camera. You got your motor display. It's right there. It's pretty good. And you can also set up a custom launch command. So you can program a custom command and say it and interact with your phone using your voice. Other than that, it's a pretty stock experience of Android 6.0 Marshmallow. And again, in terms of software, it's been a very smooth and fast experience. With the only downside being, with a ton of apps open, you will get a lot of slowdown there. So that pretty much covers the hardware and software on the Moto X Pure Edition. Next, jumping over to the Moto G5 Plus. Start off with the hardware. Now, in terms of hardware, you have 2 gigs of RAM on this guy and 32 gigs of onboard storage with micro SD card expansion. You have a 3000 milliamp hour battery. You have a 12 megapixel dual focus rear firing camera, which can record 4K video recording at 30 frames a second, 720p slow motion at 120 frames. Okay. On the front, you have a 5 megapixel camera, which can record 1080p at 30 frames and do 480p 120 frames slow motion. You have a 5.2 inch 1080p IPS LCD display with the screen density of 403. Alright. Okay. Other internals, you have a Snapdragon 625 processor, which is an octa-core processor, and an Adreno 506 GPU. Other things, you have a 5 megapixel camera on the front. You don't have LED flash in this one, but you can use the screen as flash. Alright? And you have one front-firing speaker, which also doubles as your speaker and your receiver. Then you have your fingerprint scanner, which works really, really good, guys. Really good. Now, in terms of software on this guy, you're running pretty much the latest version of Android 7.0 Nougat. So you have all of your Nougat features. You have your split screen multitasking. You have your permissions. You have all this extra information in the settings is available at a glance here. So you don't have to do too many sub-menu diving here. So that's really, really nice. And overall, in terms of software, it's a very stock and fluid experience. And I really, really like what Motorola, now owned by Lenovo, has done with this one. They really only included the features that they thought would really help the user experience as a whole. So you still have your motor display. You still have your chop for the flashlight. Still got that bad boy. Still got your twist to open the camera. Alright. They did throw in the double press of the power button, which also take you into the camera. Alright. And then they have their one button nav feature, which lets you use the fingerprint scanner to navigate the device. Now, for more information on this stuff, please check out my full review, which will be linked down below, where I talk about this stuff in more detail. You can also shrink the screen, make it more one-handed friendly, flip over to mute, or put on Do Not Disturb, pick up to silence ringing. So, all that good stuff there. And then really, in my opinion, Motorola didn't really throw in any gimmicks. They just kept it stock and simple and threw in the most user-friendly features here. And again, they did it in a way that doesn't bog down the experience. It actually helps it as a whole. So that's really, really good. And again, in terms of the overall software, it's been a very fluid and fast user experience, and I've had no issues. Alright, so that pretty much covers the hardware and the software on both of these devices. Now, this will be the point where I talk about the glitches, stutters, and the crashes. Pretty much, with the Moto X Pure Edition, you're only getting that touch of app slowdown with a bunch of apps open in the background. With the Moto G5 Plus, I did have some camera issues where the camera kept crashing. I did get a few reboots, but other than that, it was a very fluid experience. And the only other issue that I had was a little bit of focus hunting and the little bit of app slowdown. Other than that, wasn't an issue. So that pretty much covers the glitches, stutters, and crashes on both devices. Next, let's talk about the Wi-Fi in both of these devices. Let's start off with the Moto X Pure Edition here. Now, in terms of Wi-Fi on the Moto X Pure Edition, it has Wi-Fi 802.11, BGNN, and AC. So what does that mean? You have access to your 2.4 gigahertz band and your 5 gigahertz band. If you have a router that supports it, or your home internet supports it. And in terms of Wi-Fi, guys, the Wi-Fi speeds on the Moto X Pure Edition are phenomenal. Phenomenal. I had no issues with the Wi-Fi or the data speeds for that matter. As you can see, phenomenal data speeds as well. Now, let me load up this YouTube video so y'all can see it in real time. Now, I do have a bunch of stuff open in the background, so that's why y'all see a little app refresh there. And let me just load this up and put it down, because this real-time test we'll also give y'all a sample of the speakers. Let me let that ad finish.
Except for a few key differences. Pork belly is bigger.
Alright, pause. Alright. Now, before we do that little quick demonstration here, let me just talk about the Wi-Fi on the Moto G5 Plus. And it's pretty much a similar experience over here. Now, in terms of Wi-Fi, you have Wi-Fi 802.11 BGNN and dual band Wi-Fi. So you do have access to your 2.4 gigahertz band and your 5 gigahertz band wherever applicable. If you have a decent router or a nice home network setup, you shouldn't have any issues. And again, in terms of Wi-Fi, although the numbers themselves as a whole are not as good as the Moto X Pure Edition, in terms of the overall Wi-Fi experience as a whole, I would have to say it has been very good, and so has the overall data experience as well. And I've had no issues with it. So now, I'll go ahead and load up a video here real quick. Alright, let that ad play.
Our sale has special hours this Saturday and Sunday for...
Alright, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to give you a Wi-Fi demonstration, and this will also double as a speaker test. So we're going to do this. I'm going to scrub through the video, let y'all hear it, let y'all see how it performs in real time, and we're going to test the volume at 50% and 100%. So let's start with the Moto G5 Plus here. Enjoy, guys. Alright, now let's jump over to the Moto X Pure Edition. %. Alright, so real quick Wi-Fi test there. Now, again, you guys may be wondering, in terms of Wi-Fi, who won? I have to say, in terms of overall performance, I'd have to say that it's a tie across the board. Really, really solid Wi-Fi performance across the board on either device. So if you pick either device up, you should have no problems with the Wi-Fi. That being said, in terms of speakers, I'm going to have to give the edge to the Moto X Pure Edition. Now, although the speaker on the Moto G5 Plus was good, and it was very loud and very crisp and clear, it just lacked the bass and overall punch as seen on the Moto X Pure Edition. This one just sounded a whole lot better to me. The music really popped out at me. It was good. It was really good. So in terms of speakers, I'm going to have to give the slight edge in the media consumption department to the Moto X Pure Edition. Alright. Now, next thing. Let's talk about the bands and the LTE support on these guys. And pretty much this one is pretty simple. Across the board, both of these devices will work on any major carriers in the United States or any GSM carriers abroad or any GSM carriers in the United States as well. So when I say that, I mean companies like Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and any of the MVNOs, Metro PCS, Virgin, Cricket, you name it. Either of these devices will work, and they'll work no problem. So, in terms of LTE and band support, you should have no issues regardless of which device you pick up. You drop your SIM off, drop your SIM in. Gosh, can't talk. Drop your SIM in, and you're good to go. Alright, next, let's talk about the Bluetooth on these guys. Let's start with the Moto X Pure Edition. Now, in terms of Bluetooth, the Moto X Pure Edition has Bluetooth 4.1 technology in it. And I gotta say, this has become the biggest downside to this device because the Bluetooth, when it works correctly, works no problem. But there have been many incidents where I'm using a Bluetooth device and then I disconnect it, and the phone doesn't realize that the Bluetooth device was disconnected, so it doesn't engage the external speakers, and I have to toggle on and off Bluetooth or toggle on and off airplane mode or restart the device. Other than that, when the Bluetooth works how it's supposed to, it's going to work with no problem, but there is a big downside with this device. Alright, next. In terms of Bluetooth on the Moto G5 Plus, this guy has Bluetooth 4.2 technology in it. And I have to tell you guys, the Bluetooth on this guy was phenomenal. Didn't have any issues. Connected up to a bunch of devices. Didn't have any problems. So, in terms of the Bluetooth department, I have to give the edge to the Moto G5 Plus. Alright? Now next. Moving on, next thing I want to talk about with you guys are the GPSs in these guys. And really, guys, in terms of the GPS support, guys, I have to say that it's been a really, really good experience, regardless of whichever device I was using. The GPS on the Moto X Pure Edition locked on within seconds and worked with no problems. Oops. And the same can be said of the GPS in the Moto G5 Plus. No issues with the GPS on either of these devices. They worked. They locked on within seconds. Turn by turn was no problem. Anything using the GPS didn't have any issues. So if you're picking either of these devices up and you're very GPS heavy like myself, you're going to have a very enjoyable experience regardless of device, either device you pick up. So in terms of GPS, it's really, really good on either device. Okay. Alright, next. So, the next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall call quality and speaker call quality on both of these devices. And pretty much I would have to say using these guys, I'd have to say it's pretty much the same across the board. Now, in terms of speaker call quality, didn't have any receiver call quality. Sorry, guys, didn't have any problems with either receiver calls on either of these devices. Didn't have any problems. When I had good reception, phone calls came through crisp and clear and loud, no problems. Same can be said of the speaker calls on these devices, with the one exception. I do wish that they got a touch louder. That could just be me going deaf. That could just be me getting old. But that was the one downside that I had to these. But other than that, the receiver call quality and the speaker call quality have been pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Now next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the cameras and the camera interfaces. Okay? Now, these camera interfaces are slightly similar, but also different. Let's start off with the Moto X Pure Edition. Now, as I've said in the feature section, you can get into this quick twist of the wrist, and you're in. You can also use your Android shortcuts on the lock screen, and you're in as well. I did that kind of fast. Sorry, guys. So you can also use that, your Android shortcuts on the lock screen, and you're in. Other than that, when we talk about the camera interface, I have to say the camera interface on the Moto X Pure Edition is one of my favorites. It's very quick, easy, and simple to use. To take a photo, you just simply tap the screen, snap a photo. Take a video, just simply touch it. You can snap photos while in video by just tapping on the screen. You can pause the video, you can stop the video, just like that. To access all your settings, you just swipe in from the side. You got access to your HDR, your flash, your video resolutions. So you can see, you could do 1080p, you could do 720p slow motion, and you could do 4K video recording. And you can also change the how you shoot the video. So to take advantage of all 21 megapixels on this guy, you got to shoot in that 4:3 aspect ratio. If you want to shoot in that widescreen, you're going to take a megapixel hit down to 16.1 megapixels. And then other than that, you got all of your standard stuff here. You got your panorama, you got your timer, you got all that stuff here. And pretty much that's it. Now, jumping in, you can also do another quick twist gesture to get to the front-facing camera. How you doing, guys? And again, it's very similar. To get to all your other settings, you swipe in here. Got your HDR controls, got your flash control, because you do got a front-facing flash on this guy. Keep in mind the front-facing camera is 5 megapixels, and you could do 1080p video recording and 720p slow motion. And again, to take full advantage of all 5 megapixels, you're going to have to shoot in that 4:3 aspect ratio. If you want to shoot in widescreen, you're going to have to bump it down to the 3.8 megapixels. And again, you have access to your timer, all that good stuff here. But that being said, in terms of the cameras and the camera interface on the Moto X Pure Edition, I have to say it really, really is a joy to use, and I've had no issues with it. No issues whatsoever. And in terms of using it, it's very, very user-friendly, and the learning curve on it is very, very easy. It's very easy to pick up and use, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a good photo. And keep in mind, this is in my opinion, 9 times out of 10. So it's really, really good. Now next, let's talk about the cameras and the camera interface on the Moto G5 Plus. Now, similar to the Moto X, get in with your simple twist gesture. Okay? And again, you can get to the front with your twist gesture as well. Additionally, you got your Android on-screen shortcut here from the lock screen, or you can just double press the power button and you're in. Alright, now talking about the interface, it's very, very similar to the Moto X Pure Edition, but it does have its differences. Now, you can set this up multiple ways. Instead of having your pull-out wheel, which they still do kind of have, instead of having your pull-out carousel, you got your pull-out side menu, which lets you control your quick launch gesture, the shutter sound, whether you have an on-screen button to take a picture, or you could do the tap to take a picture. It lets you control your video resolutions. So you can see, you can also do 4K video recording on this as well. And you can also do 720p slow motion on this guy as well. Keep in mind, guys, you have a 12 megapixel dual focus camera on the back. Alright. Now, other things about the interface, you have your HDR right on the screen. You got your flash right on the screen. You got your timer right on the screen. Again, you can flip to the front with that twist gesture, or you can tap on it here, take you to the front, go back. To get to your modes, tap that little camera icon. You see you got your photo mode, you got your video mode, you got your panorama mode, you got your slow motion mode, and what's very nice, you got your pro mode here. So you can really dial up the camera and take that photo just the way you would like. Now, this only works in photos, not in videos. So that's a downside there. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward with the rear-facing camera. And if we switch to the front, it's again more of the same. So you do have your pro mode on the front-facing camera as well. You do have slow-mo mode on the front-facing camera, although it only is in 480p at 120 frames, so no 720p here. Got your video mode. It's a 5 megapixel camera on the front. You can only record video at 1080p. Okay, and then you got your photo modes there. Then you got your beauty face mode for the front. You got your flash, you got your timer, and so on and so forth. Let me switch it back. This is how you see it. You got your HDR, you got all that good stuff there. And that pretty much does it for the front-facing camera. Now, you do have that screen flash gesture, like I said, because although there is no front-facing flash, you can still get that flash using the screen. And that pretty much does it for the cameras on the Moto G5 Plus. Overall, it's a very fluid experience on either interface, but if I had to choose in terms of interfaces and which one is more user-friendly, I have to go with the Moto X Pure Edition. That being said, in terms of photos and video quality, again, please check out my follow me on Google Plus for the photo samples. I got a ton of photo samples with the Moto X Pure Edition up there. For video samples, please check out my video samples playlist, which is on YouTube. But in terms of photos and videos on either device, I'd have to say I'd